Honolulu, Hawaii. My name is Richard Volsteck, the president of the East-West Center, and it's a delight to have you all join us for this very special event this afternoon. The East-West Center is proud to present this program in partnership with the U.S.-Japan Friendship Commission and the International House of Japan. It has been 10 years since a tragic devastation in East Japan with an earthquake and tsunami leading to a nuclear crisis, the effects of which persist today. Hawaii and Japan have shared a long history of friendship, support, and cultural connections. So it was no surprise that in 2011, that alongside efforts in other parts of the United States, the Hawaii communities mobilized quickly with an outpouring of aloha and relief efforts. The support we share during times of crisis reflect and strengthen our bonds together. We continue to be inspired by the thoughtfulness, creative spirit, and profound work of artists who underscore injustices, who advocate for issues, ideas, and communities, who remind us what hope and resiliency look like through times of crisis on scales from local to global. We look forward today to learning from our artist panel who are crossing boundaries of time, space, language, and culture to find a wealth of common ground and creativity. Special thanks to our panelists and all the backup people who have taken so much time and effort to prepare today's events. And to you, our audience, thank you for joining us, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, for this very special occasion. It is now my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce Paige Cunningham Streeter, who is the Executive Director of the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission in Washington, D.C. Over to you.
Thank you, Richard. I'm delighted to bring greetings this evening for some of you and this morning for others on behalf of the Japan-United States Friendship Commission. On behalf of our commissioners and our partners at the National Endowment for the Arts and the International House of Japan, it's my honor to welcome our audience this evening for this second in what has been a series of virtual programs featuring our US-Japan NEA creative artists. We're delighted to be able to partner with the East-West Center and to bring you this extraordinary program, which will be showcasing our JUSFC Nichibei artists, and also to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the Great Japan earthquake. This has been a challenging year for many of us, and yet despite the disruptions and the losses and the uncertainties and injustices, our artists have persevered to seek ways to stay connected and also to share their ideas and inspire and bring a bit of light and hope. I'm looking forward to this evening's program. It will be such a treat to be able to learn about the artist's creative process, to see the ways that they've melded American and Japanese artistic styles and themes, and also highlighted the themes of the Olympics and are being able to bringing us inspirational techniques that will inspire the global community. And now it's my pleasure to introduce video remarks from two individuals representing the governments of Japan and the United States. First, we'll hear from Carolyn Glassman, who is the Minister Counselor in the US Embassy in Tokyo. And her remarks will be followed by Minister Mizobuchi, the spokesperson for the government of Japan, based in the Embassy of Japan in Washington, D.C. And so we'll, at the conclusion of those remarks, we'll continue with our program with the capable hands of Miho Walsh. Miho is our distinguished panelist. She's also a dear friend, and we're excited to be able to have her skillfully engage with our artists and also introduce to you their artistic style. So thank you so much, all of you, and I'm looking forward to this evening's program.
Hello from Tokyo. I'd like to thank the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission and the National Endowment for the Arts for sponsoring the U.S.-Japan Creative Artists Fellowship Program. I'd also like to thank the many talented artists who have collaborated on a diversity of amazing projects. I am honored and pleased to join you for today's virtual event. At President Biden's inauguration, the youngest ever inaugural poet, Amanda Gorman, proved that the power of her words as an artist can captivate, inspire, and transform. Her art, like the work of the artist and Journey Itself Home, create an opportunity for us during this difficult time to think about what it means to be human and to express our thoughts and values in a way that changes how we live our lives. We know that the arts can foster understanding between people, bringing together communities, both big and small, in our neighborhoods and from across the world to share perspectives on our experiences and to empower others to effect positive change. I myself have also experienced firsthand how the arts can help contribute to our individual and collective well-being and allow us to amplify our voices in unison on the many challenges that we face despite the physical distance that separates us. I am thus not at all surprised that when a pandemic forced so many of us to stay home, artists in this project found a way to collaborate because art truly transcends boundaries. I'd like to close by quoting a fellow Chicagoan, artist Judy Chicago, who stated, "Art matters if artists use their talents to help us find our way." I'd like to thank the many artists in this project who are doing just that. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone. My name is Masashi Mizobuchi, the spokesperson for the Embassy of Japan. I'd like to express my deepest gratitude toward the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Nichibei artists for their continued dedication to the Nichibei Creative Artists Program. I would also like to thank the JUSFC and the East-West Center for creating such a wonderful event and inviting me. 10 years ago, Japan faced a terrible earthquake. Since last year, all of us have been facing a new obstacle in the form of a devastating global pandemic. I have no doubt that our countries shall overcome this new challenge together as we have before. Bringing people together, inspiring, soothing, and sharing. These are the powers of art. Art makes people happy and brings us hope. I believe that the works of Nichibei artists will help us overcome our new challenges. I hope that today's event will be a great success. Thank you.
Thank you again to tonight's institutional partners for making this presentation possible, and especially for the very thoughtful and inspiring opening remarks from President Volstek, Executive Director Cunningham Streeter, and Minister Counselors Glassman and Mizobuchi. Your heartfelt remarks amplify our appreciation for the friendship we share, and importantly, also recognize the exceptional ability artists have to foster mutual understanding, empathy, connection, and how they give us hope. In navigating challenges and continuing to build a better future, many of us share the belief that the single most effective way to achieve common ground is through person-to-person exchange. Through today's presentation, I hope we will learn and experience with these extraordinary artists and understand how and why cultural exchanges and creative collaborations are specifically and uniquely effective in building such long-lasting relationships. In commemorating the 10th anniversary of the 3/11 Tohoku disaster, we will also explore the important question of how do we begin? I am deeply honored and pleased to introduce our panelists today. Conversation artists, Sue Mark and Bruce Douglas of the creative team marksearch, based in Oakland, California, and currently in Tokyo. Hiro Abe and Natsuka Endo, multimedia artists also based in Tokyo, and Honomi Ijima, partner to the project and an environmental scientist and cultural translator based in Kanagawa. Before we begin, I would like to remind our audience that we are grateful for the expertise of Ms. Shihori Okazaki and Ms. Sanae Sasajima, and have made available simultaneous interpretation through the globe key at the bottom of your screen. This is a bilingual event, and both Japanese and English can be used by the audience when participating. We are fortunate to have these artists and cultural experts, each of whose practice holds community engagement at its core. In that spirit, I would like to invite and encourage our audience members to participate by sharing your thoughts, comments, and questions through the chat and the Q&A boxes. We hope to weave audience comments through our discussion, and we will also leave time for more participation at the end of our roundtable. And now, with the hope of bringing us closer through shared experience with our artists, we will begin with a short clip. Please join us.
Yeah.
Hey, you can see us, but we can't see you.
皆さんは私たちを見ることができますが、私たちは皆さんを見ることができません。
誰かと一緒に過ごせないとき、どうやってつながりを感じることができますか？
How can we feel connected when we can't be together?
We all breathe the same air, but where you are, it might be morning or evening or sometime in between.
私たちはみんな同じ空気を吸っています。ですが、皆さんがいる場所では朝でしょうか？夕方でしょうか？その間かもしれませんね。
以前なら、私たちはみんな同じ部屋に肩を並べていたでしょう。今は画面を通して海を越え、皆さんとこうして会うことができました。
In the before times, we would have all been in the same room, shoulder to shoulder. But now, we're connected across the world, screen to screen.
What is your land? What is your water? Please share in the chat.
あなたのいる場所はどこですか？チャットボックスに書いてください。
さあ、ご一緒に私たちと手を合わせてみましょう。触れていることを想像してみましょ
う。Let's each put our hands on our screens and imagine that we are touching.
How can we begin again? This is a question many survivors ask.
困難を経験した人はどうすればまた歩み始められるのでしょ
う。春分の日の今日、ここから始めましょ
う。The equinox is here, an opportunity.
Thank you so very much. Wonderful. What a wonderful way to begin tonight's program with kamishibai, the traditional art form of showing pictures and engaging an audience. And I just want to highlight the question again of sort of sharing with our participants where people are where people are coming from. And so feel free to put that into the chat box. Wonderful. I see a lot of California, Japan, all across the United States. Where's your water and where's your land? I'd like to begin by setting some context to this conversation tonight. And maybe I'll start off by asking Sue and Bruce to give us a little overview of the project. What did it originally entail? What did it originally look like? And why did you choose to focus on the 3/11 disaster?
Thank you so much, Miho. Well, you know, of course, all of our ideas were different a few years ago. And we came together with Hiroyuki and Natsuka Endo as two families wanting to use this incredible opportunity to come together during the time of the Olympics. And what a huge international platform and audience, a time to really bring together some critical issues that we're all facing, and thinking about the 10th anniversary of the 3/11 disaster, of course, is just so paramount on our minds and a huge indicator of how we're all connected. We are all involved in these kinds of localized but globalized disasters as we're feeling with the pandemic. And we wanted to use our skills and capacity as artists who connect with people to amplify voices that are not being heard.
Thank you. Did you know much about the triple disaster before you embarked on this project?
Well, we knew some about it, of course, being in California and during the time of the disaster, you know, it was very fresh in our minds and a lot of concerns about what was safe. And I think that's really something that struck us, is this idea of invisible risk and how do we know what is safe? How do we know what is dangerous? And we had the good fortune to come to Japan in 2016, also through the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission. And a lot of our friends in California who are Japanese gave us pretty stern warnings about where not to travel because it still wasn't safe. And so that really stayed with us. And I think our decisions to come again and really approach this topic meant that we weren't quite sure what kind of risk we were going to encounter. And our original plan was to travel to the Tohoku region, which of course we have not been able to do.
Thank you. And Natsuka-san and Hiro-san, you experienced 3/11 in Japan 10 years ago. You were there. So for you, certainly you would have different sort of approaches to this. Now, 10 years later, can you tell us a little bit about how this particular project is meaningful for you?
はい、そうですね。私たちにとっても、まさか東日本大震災を、テーマにするとは最初はとても思っていませんでした。最初はもうちょっとどういうテーマでやろうかっていうところからこのプロジェクトを始めたので、最初は、いろいろブレインストーミングをしながらどういうテーマにしようかっていうことを考えてきたんですけど、実は2019年に私たちは最初に、カリフォルニアでチームの活動をスタートしたんですけど、カリフォルニアで、一緒にオークランドで活動する中で、カリフォルニアにも地震が起きている、地震が多いということをスーさんたちから教えていただくんですね。まさかカリフォルニアでこんなに地震があるということを私たちもあんまり知らなくて、で一つ1989年の、ロマプリータ地震というものがカリフォルニアだったそうで、ちょうど私たちが2019年に一緒に活動している時、その30周年を迎えるっていうような話が出てきまして、そのあたりからこう私たちにとっての地震っていうのとスーさんとブルースさんたちにとっても地震っていうのがすごくこう人生のある一部にこう深く刻まれているってことを知って、そのあたりから東日本大震災というのもちょっとテーマにしてみようっていうふうになりました。自分としてもどうしてもこう地震をテーマにするっていうのがなかなかこう直面できないところがあって、ちょっと内心すごく混乱してたんですけど、スーさんたちの経験があってこそ一緒にやっていこうっていうようなことになりました。それで10年間経って思うこととしては、なかなか自分たちだけではこういう視点に立てないなっていうふうに思います。どうしても自分は当時2011年の3月11日は東京にいて、東京の自宅にいて、被災したんですけど、日本にいるだけだとなかなかこう日本の外からの目っていうのがやっぱ分からなくて、でこの10年というか去年一昨年からの2年間は それまで自分が8年間日本の中で地震とどう向き合ってきたかっていうことがスーさんたちの視点と一緒になったことで別の視点から地震を捉えることができた2年間になっていて、それで10周年を迎えられるっていうそういう今状況です。
ありがとうございます。And Natsuka-san, would you like to add your thoughts?
はい。ですね、今、安倍さんの方から別の視点という言葉がありましたけども、私も、東日本大震災の時は、大学を出たばっかり、社会に出ていくタイミングでの、震災だったんですけれども、その時はまだアーティストとして独立してないというかまだ確立してない状態で社会に出たばっかりの瞬間だったので何か震災のことを考えたい、制作の中で考えたいと思ってもまだちょっと自分としてはなんて言うんだろうな、個人として向き合うにはちょっと大きすぎると言いますか、まだまだちょっと未熟だった部分もあるしまだできないなという感覚があったんですね。自分が東京で被災したんですけどもやっぱり被災地の方とはとっても距離がありますしちょっとどう考えていいのかまだわからないっていった状況で、それがだんだんアーティストとして活動しながら10年経ってきて今ここにいるんですけどもやっぱりスーさんたちと出会って一緒に考えてみようってなったことですごく自分がどこにいるのか分かってきたといいますか、なんか自分がどういう目線で捉えていたのかっていうことがスーさんたちとのやり取りとかこのプロジェクトの中で東北の方にお話を聞いたりしていく中でやっと自分がどこにいるのか分かってきたっていう感覚がありまして、なんかそういうところにすごくいろんな人の目があるっていうことはそれだけ何ですかね、摩擦の中でいろんなことが起きてだんだんそういうことに実感ができてくるっていうのを感じています。
Thank you so much. It really is such a powerful experience to have a shared experience. And even when that shared experience is a disaster or a profound challenge, to have experienced it and then not feel alone. And I think that's something that we're all sort of feeling now. I know in experiencing and going through this COVID-19 pandemic, one of the things that we've all longed for is that sense of connection. So it's so interesting to hear each of you talk about feeling that powerful connection, and also the way of looking at something that you've shared. So I know, Hiro-san, you talked about sort of the inside eyes and the outside eyes. And I thought that was so fascinating. When you went to California, you had learned more about what the American perspective or perception of the Tohoku disaster was. And in as much as it was so different from your own, there were points of commonality, points of connection. And I think it's just such a beautiful thing when you can come out, as Natsuka-san said, sort of, and feel the confidence when you're working together on a project as enormous as this and as multifaceted. It's sort of a daunting thing to think about, but it's such a critically important project. As I've learned about this work of art or journey, I've come to understand and continuing to understand how many layers it has, and to be able to do that together has truly been such an amazing thing to experience. And in that, I guess I sort of want to move to, I think, Sue, you had said this project would really only be possible because of the different roles that each of you have played. So I find that very interesting as well. And maybe we can sort of talk about that. The different skills and knowledge and perspective that you bring And maybe I'll start with Bruce, who is the engineer and sort of the concept, in charge of sort of concept design for this project. And so, Bruce, can you tell us a little bit about the original concept, sort of how this original art project was going to happen, and then the challenges that you had to overcome in adapting it because of all the changes?
Yes, so our projects are performative in terms of presenting, creating a format for people to present people's stories, reflect people's stories back to themselves. So we create situations, vehicles, graphics, installations that reflect this. And we had initially worked on a concept to travel through the Tohoku region and create a sort of traveling community forum that would be a room on the back of a truck that would meet people where they are in public spaces, and was to be an interesting and mobile platform. That was the basic format of the project for the Olympics. Well, since COVID-19 has prevented us from meeting in public places and being indoors, and the Olympics reschedule, we've made many shifts on the concept of how we're going to reflect the stories back to the audience participants. And so we've been working with the ideas of traveling in Tokyo and sort of creating a traveling billboard instead of a room. We've moved away from that, and we've moved more towards using the, as we learned about the earthquake markers, that, you know, there are long-standing stones throughout the region that mark the previous extent of tsunamis, and that we want to create something that is thematically a marker, and also will talk and present the story. So that's how we've come around through at least 3 major shifts, and now we're in the refining stages of what is a marker that's evocative of recovery and brings people hope, and is also recognizable and reflective of the situation we're in right now.
Extraordinary. It just, trying to envision sort of the journey, really, and thinking about how you had created this almost mobile, accessible room on the back of a truck that would travel through from Tokyo to Fukushima, albeit maintaining safety, albeit maintaining an inviting environment for community members to feel safe, and at the same time building that kind of trust with the participants in this project. It's just truly extraordinary. And I believe you were also instrumental during the evolution and sort of adapting the project when the pandemic hit, in terms of making a space within your home apartment in Tokyo, making a sort of wooden room full of inspiration boards and post-its, going to your website and reading through and looking at photos of that space is just truly extraordinary. And you can see all of the research that's been done for this project. And here's where I want to move to Sue, who I believe your role is researcher, photographer, sort of looking at the writing aspect of it. And can you tell us about research in your practice and why that's so important?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of different ways to get to know a place. And I think that starting with what's already available and printed is where I go first. But that's really just to lay a foundation so that I can feel like I have some knowledge in approaching the unheard voices from the people who are in a place and who have truly the on the ground experience. And I have to say, there's so many surprising benefits, I guess you could say, of the extension of our project. So we first came to Tokyo imagining we had 6 months that we were going to execute this project, and now it will be 18 months. And so we arrived, well, 1 year ago, pretty much today. This is our 1 year anniversary of being here. And we left Oakland right as everything was shutting down. And then as we got here, within 2 weeks, everything shut down as well. And so we were trying to decide, should we stay or not? And, what I asked our partners at the iHouse is, can you fast track us a membership to the library so that we can do some research? How am I going to manage 3 months without any materials to look at? And they did graciously grant us this membership, and we all went with our son too. We went to the library, we stayed there all day, and I think we took out maybe 40 books. And the library at the iHouse is an incredible resource for materials, and we took out books from everything, from haiku to Shintoism to testimonials, first-person narratives from the disasters, building techniques. And this was like, kind of like an unexpected residency inside of a residency. And we spent the months of the isolation just diving into materials. And, I realize now in retrospect that what we knew had we moved forward with our original plan was just the thinnest skin. And, in the midst of this pandemic, of course, we know so much more now, but last April, there was so much we didn't know. It was very difficult to read first-person stories of the tragedies that happened, and I could only read a couple at a time. But I think that it was really also important to see the synergy. That was a very quick disaster with very long impacts. And now we're, our disaster, the pandemic, has also been a kind of endurance. And how do you persevere and how do you move on? These are the big questions. The kind of emotional underpinning is something that you cannot get from just one resource. And so, the research that I've been engaged with is coming from both understanding the particularities of the situation in Japan, our conversations with Hiro-san and Natsuka-san, which, we met on Zoom and talked about all of this and learned a tremendous amount about how, what's a culturally appropriate, culturally acceptable way to deal with situations that are out of your reach and control. And I think one of the first very important expressions that Hiro-san taught me that I repeat a lot is shogunai. There, that we can't do something about an impossible situation, but that doesn't mean we do nothing. We do what we can.
So well put. It just really is one of those phrases that not many other cultures have, but it is one that I think also carries just a almost acceptance or synergy with nature, and with sort of organic things that happen naturally. And I love that you also brought up really the incredible resource at iHouse, extraordinary library, and the silver lining sort of being the additional research that you were able to complete because of the pandemic situation that we're in. When you talked about sort of meeting with Hiro-san and Natsuka-san on Zoom, I was so curious and moved to know about Natsuka-san's simultaneous visual translation. So Natsuka-san, you bring to this group extraordinary record keeping and sort of interpretation through drawing and painting. And it adds this really sort of profound depth to the visual art component of this project. Can you show us or share with us a little bit about what you feel like you can accomplish through those drawings? I believe you once said you thought you could capture some things in drawings that may not necessarily be captured if you're simply in a conversation or engaged in that moment. And can you talk to us a little bit about that?
はい、ありがとうございます。私が、プロジェクトの中でやってきたことをちょっと絵を描くという目線からお話しさせていただきます。ですね、私はずっとこのプロジェクトに関わる以前から目に見えないもの、何かこう人と人の間にあるものだとか、あとは人と環境の間にあるものだとか、そういうものの間にある何かこう捉えきれないようなもの、それに対するこうそれぞれの実感みたいなものにイメージがつけられないかなということを、それを視点にしながらずっと絵を描いてきました。で、このプロジェクトに出会って、この中で、何が私の役割なのかなと思ってずっと考えていたんですけれども、最初は思っていたプランが遂行できずに、コロナの状況の中でどうしようかなって言ってみんなでチームのみんなで話し合いを続ける時間が長くありまして、それで、私は実はですね英語がそんなに得意ではないんですね。勉強はしているんですけれども、なかなか完全に理解するところまでには達していなくて、チームのみんなの話も半分ぐらいしか分かってないんですよ。でそんな中で私が一体何を書こうかなと思った時に皆さんがこう会話しながらこう相談している中でこう盛り上がる瞬間っていうのがあるんですね。なんかこう同じワードのところでみんながそれかもしれないねとかってなんか少しこう気持ちが動くような瞬間があるっていうのをすごく感じていて、なんかそういうそのみんなの間にある言葉を通してこう何かが起きたような瞬間をつかもうと思ってずっとそれを絵にしようっていうことを最初に決めました。はい、で、だんだんプロジェクトが進んでいくにつれて東北に住んでらっしゃる皆さんとミーティングを持つ機会がありまして、その中ではこう皆さんが震災に関してお話ししてくださることに、その場でイメージをつけていくっていうことをしたんですけれども、そこでもどちらかというと、私が思い描くものを打ち出していくというよりは、皆さんがこうなんとなくこう皆さんの頭の中にあるんじゃないかなっていうものを掴みに行くような感覚で書いていました。はい。
ありがとうございます。There's an incredible mind map, a little, I think a QuickTime video of you doing a mind map on the marksearch site and also the Nichibei artist site. So I encourage all of our audience participants, if you haven't already had the chance, to really spend some time on both of these websites. They have wonderful clips and photographs of all of this in action. It's a lot of what Natsuka-san was talking about, capturing those moments of connection or where you just feel like there's been so much momentum in the discovery, albeit on Zoom, really, for much of this collaboration. So Hiro-san, please share with us. You are sort of, your role is to look at the audio visual. And when Bruce was talking about these sort of stone sound stones or memorial sort of structures and stones that you're anticipating putting together, the audio visual piece and taking sort of the different emotions and sort of the senses, how we perceive different components of what the community that you're engaging is feeling, putting this into the project, and how can you do that? And please share more with us.
はい。ですね、先ほどもブルースさんからお話がありましたけど、このプロジェクトは当初は、東北地方に車で向かっていって実際に人々と会って話をしながら進めていくプロジェクトだったんですね。なのでオーディオビジュアルとしては、実際にカメラとかビデオカメラを持って一緒に東北地方へ向かってそこで実際に人々が話していったりとかいろんなことをこう言ってくれるものをこう録画してそれを展覧会で展示するっていうようなことを計画していたんですけれど、コロナの影響でこう物理的に東北地方へ行くっていうことが不可能になってしまいまして、それでものすごいこう転換を迫られました。で、先ほどブルーさんからも話があったサウンドストーン、音の石碑ということなんですけど、音の石碑は、形としては石碑の形なんですけど、実はそれが石でできてるわけではなくて、住宅に使われるような建物の建材で作るんですけど、建材でできていて、その中に、スピーカーを仕込んで、スピーカーと小さなコンピューターを入れてプログラムを組むんですけど、そこから、人の声がするというようなものです。で、実際に録音しに行くことができないのでどうやってやろうかっていうふうに結構私たちも考えたんですけど、僕にとってもすごくびっくりしたのが、去年2020年の1年間でこうやってZoom越しに会議をしたりと会話をするっていうことが当たり前に一気に当たり前になってしまって、誰もそこにこう違和感を感じなくなってしまったっていうのがやっぱり我々アーティストチームとしてもすごくびっくりしていて、最初はもう本当に電話とかこういうインターネット越しスクリーン越しの会話では人と話すことなんて不可能なんじゃないかっていうふうに1年前は話してたんですけど、もう誰もそこにこう疑いを持たなくなっている状態になってしまって、なのであるタイミングからむしろこういう形、こうやってスクリーン越しに人の話を聞くっていうことが今では人とこうコミュニケーションするツールとしてはいいんじゃないかっていうふうに考えを改めたんですね。で、そこからサウンドストーンのための、録音っていうのを、もう最初から Zoom とかこうインターネット越しでやろうっていうふうに決めて、それでいろんな人にこう人づてに、募集をしまして、もう何十人という人に今協力してもらってます。で、やっぱり実際に人に話を聞いてるとすごくこう不思議に思うのが、やっぱものすごいこうプライベートな話ができるんですよね。で、それがなんでかって考えた時に、やっぱこう皆さん自分の家とか自分の部屋から話をするんですよね。だから元々のプランだと、我々が東北地方に行ってどこか公民館とか町のカフェとかで話を聞く予定だったんですけど、もしかしたらそうやってカフェで話を聞く時よりも今の状態の方が皆さんの感情とか今何を思ってるのかっていうプライベートなことが聞けるんじゃないかっていうふうに思って、でそれがすごいなんかいろんなことがこう合わさってそういう状態が生まれてきたっていうのがすごくなんか運命というか何かすごいセレンディピティみたいなのを感じていて、でさらに言うとそれってこうなんか家にいながらみんないろんなとこを旅してるような状態になるので、なんかまさにこうジャーニー・イッツェルフ・ホームっていうタイトルがなんかすごいところでつながって、旅はすみかっていうタイトルがすごいところでなんかつながってきてるなっていうふうに最近思ってます。
ありがとうございます。Thank you so much. It's so well put. I think that the world has discovered both sort of how flat Zoom can be, but also how much of a incredible platform it can be, because you're really connecting people as they are in their lives, with their family members, with their belongings, with their, as they are. And I think one of the, in our conversation with Sue a couple weeks ago, one of the most important sort of bridges, if you will, Sue, you described to be able to access people personally and talk to people personally and start to really build that trust that you need to in order to have these conversations. You said sort of the critical moment was when Honomi-san joined the team. She was really the glue or the bridge you talked about. And Honomi-san, as a environmental scientist and cultural translator, and sort of building that kind of trust, can you talk about your role and how you did build that trust? As we just learned from Hiro-san, most of this was across a digital platform, but give us some insight into that.
Sure, thank you. Well, first of all, I haven't met the team yet in person since I joined the team. So, that's how the pandemic has affected us in how we as a team work together as well. And I hope someday we can actually meet in a room together. But when Sue and I have a mutual connection to Oakland, California, and we met through a mutual friend who is also joining us today on a webinar. And I got to know this project through Sue. And when she told me about this project, the team still was, brainstorming about like, how do we, how are we going to shape this project? So that was September of last year. And she knew that I was working with a sister city group between Oakland, California, and Fukuoka city in Kyushu Island, and we were kind of, also brainstorming together. How are we going to connect with people, while we can't see them in person? And we were kind of thinking that maybe we could use this existing connections that are based on trust, that are already within community members. And we were thinking maybe we could use the sister city connections. So we did a lot of research about existing sister city connections in Tohoku region. And since this is a Nichibe, Japan-U.S. relationship, we looked into specifically between Japan and U.S. sister cities. And we found many in the region. And we reached out to a couple of them. And one was Otsuchi Machi and Fort Bragg in California. And we also got to talk to them, and we found out that they were actually just finishing their sekihi, their monument, to commemorate their, sisterhood. And it's, it was kind of incredible to see that there's already connections, and people caring about each other. And that's when we learned that, we could not use this, but we could sort of enhance, this and, explore other conversation topics, within these connections, which is 311. And with the Fukuoka and Oakland Sister City Association, and I'm a vice president of Fukuoka Oakland Friendship Association. FOFA invited the artists to talk about their, incredible project, and that's kind of how we started working together. And I started meeting with the artist team regularly, and I acted sort of as the in-house translator / interpreter for the internal meetings as well. But I'm not like professionally trained interpreter, so there was a lot of hiccups, I have to say. But it was incredible and also incredible responsibility I felt in meetings, especially with people, survivors, and then bridging the really caring approach that, so Bruce take and translating that, interpreting that, not just the words, but the feelings behind their approach to the people, in the way that they can understand, so that, because this is the time where we are building trust with them too. So I felt a lot of this incredible amount of responsibility in bridging that. Yeah.
Incredible. And I know you shouldered it with such incredible skill and respect, really, and appreciation for how difficult that is. And we actually have a question from the audience that I wonder if I can weave in at this point to our panel. And then we'd like to show a video, actually, of some of these interactions. But before that, if I can just weave in this question that comes from one of our participants who writes, as a non-Japanese person writing about Japanese film, I sometimes feel uncomfortable writing about Japanese culture from the outside. I don't want to appropriate, misconstrue, or stereotype. I'd appreciate any perspective on how to avoid doing these things. Thank you. And I think that that's such an important, relevant, timely question, especially now when we're talking about the importance of cultural exchange. And yet, many times in the world, we do see examples of appropriation or just a lot of taking leeway with that. And so I open it to the panelists. Honomi-san, I don't want to put you on the spot, but as a cultural translator, maybe you can give us your sort of thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, I mean, as a Japanese person myself, working on a project that, involves with 311 Tohoku disaster, I mean, that in and of itself felt like, can I do that? Just to share that when in 2011, when the disaster happened, I wasn't in Japan. I was a college student in Oakland, California at the time. So I had no way of physically experiencing that or the aftermath, so however, at the same time, I have family ties. My relatives still live in Fukushima. So it's this like physical removedness and kind of emotional and connections to the disaster, and I've kind of grappled with that too. It's like Hiro-san was mentioning, it's like the within me that this outsider view and an insider view coexist. So, but it's always about listening into what the survivors are talking about, and people who experienced it, and really listening to their voices and paying attention to their voices and amplifying that. If you really care about that, then, or if you really care about 311 or or Japanese, any pieces of Japanese culture, first like amplify whoever is actually making that or has experienced that, and then amplify it through you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. And I think it really is the intention as well, where you're coming from when you engage in these kinds of projects. If it's out of respect and appreciation and wanting to share that, we also need to think about intention, I think.
I just want to add something, and what Honomi said, so perfectly about listening is really, really critical. And I would have to say that, Bruce and I as American artists would never try to approach this theme of working on the disaster without the deep collaboration with our partners, because it is for sure a blending of perspectives, but we're really taking the lead from them about what is okay. And you know, in the beginning, there's just a lot of questions about taboo. You know, it's taboo to talk about it. It's taboo to talk about the problems. It's taboo to dwell on you know, the hardships, and it's much better to look forward and to think about what is possible. And you know, just in terms of our process of working with trusted networks of people who already know each other, we also vetted our process with other experts, with somebody who's an arts therapist who's done work as a volunteer in the Tohoku region, and really talking about the tenderness of trauma and how not to re-traumatize people. Also, the importance of understanding what's exploitive and what is emotionally beneficial, you know, and what might be beneficial or what we think we want to hear actually may not be at all what people want to express. So we worked with a focus group of young women from the Sendai region, university students, and they were a real focus group in terms of vetting the process. And we spent about 6 weeks with them, back and forth, meeting several times, talking about what is it they want to express and how do they want to express it, and what is a safe way for us to interact with them on that. And you know, that really became our guidepost. And so the conversations that we had with people are not dwelling in the past. It's really about now. What do you need now? How are you moving forward now? And we also decided to focus on that age group of the 20 to 30-year-olds, because they're at a crossroads in their life. They're at this moment of transition, really, of becoming fully who they are. They have spent a very formative part of their lives growing up during the recovery period. And now we're in the midst of a pandemic. And so I think that the way the project has come together is not anything any of us could have ever predicted, because we've really spent time listening and learning, and it's a slower process, right? We could never have done this really in 6 months. We've needed all of this time.
Thank you so much, Sue, for that. It really, it is so important to consider process and to consider how things are done, and not just, you know, how are we going to get to the end of the project? How are we going to get to what we hope to create? But what we learn in trying to get there. And collaboration is key. And I think that is why this group, I think, is so representative of what the Nichibei Creative Artists Program is trying to achieve. Really, I think it epitomizes the idea of collaboration and respect, and doing things carefully, thoughtfully, taking your time. And so with that, I wonder if we can introduce the video of part of the project right now to give the audience a sense of what that looked like. Thank you.
最近一番よく考えることを一言で表すと何ですか？
音楽のこと、仕事のこと、将来のこと。
どのような音を聞くと励まされますか？
コーン、コーン、コーン。
安全とはどのような音ですか？
トントントントントントントン。朝起きた時に聞こえる母親が料理を作っている音。
ここまで収録された今、何を感じていますか？
心がすっきりするような感覚があります。最近一番よく考えることを一言で表すと何ですか？
自分の今後のキャリアプランや、趣味について考えます。
どのような音を聞くと励まされますか？
わー、
安全とはどのような音ですか？
わいわいわい、ガヤガヤガヤ。子供たちが公園で遊んでいる声の音です。
ここまで収録された今、何を感じていますか？
自分は騒がしいというか、音がすごい安心したり、安全だなと感じるんだなと思いました。
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Hido-san, could you tell us a little bit about what we just saw?
はい、このビデオは、先ほど話した、サウンド、音の石碑のための、音声とか映像の収録のためのビデオです。で、我々でZoomで収録をするので、Zoom向けに、手引き書というかインストラクションを作って、こういうふうに録音してください、こういうふうに録画してくださいっていうのは手順をあらかじめ作って、それを、いろいろな人に配りました。で、配って、で、この通りにやってくださいって言って、収録をしてもらったものなんですけど、最初は私たちチームとその参加してくださる人たちで一緒にやるんですが、その後はもうそのインストラクション、手引き一式をその方たちにお渡しして、その方たちとその方たちの友達でやってくださいっていう形で、どんどんこう勝手に進んでいくようにしています。で、終わった時だけ、チームのメールアドレスに出来上がったビデオや、音声を送ってくださいっていうふうに言っています。なので、今ご覧になっていただいたビデオは、私たちがお願いした方たちがその友達とやっているビデオというふうになっています。
ありがとうございます。Thank you so much. Sue and Honomi-san, can you tell us a little bit about the very thoughtful and intentional choice of questions that you provided to the participants, and a little bit about sort of the background behind that?
Hanami-san, do you want me to start or do you want to start?
Sure, go ahead, Sue.
Well, I think a lot, we talk about what kinds of questions to ask, and this is, I think, also a really critical role that Hanami-san has played in the project with working with Natsuka-san and Hiro-san, because what we can ask in English and what we can ask in Japanese, literally, right, is not the same. And so in terms of like understanding linguistic translation and cultural translation on top of respecting trauma survivors and what they need to express, it took a surprising amount of time to end up and land on 4 questions. And I think that we really, we felt that the importance of this project is reflecting this moment of now, and that it would also be a really compelling time capsule for later. And what is it that we need to be able to hear and share? And how is it that we're going to be able to support each other? And we're isolated, but we can amplify each other's voices and sounds. And so we had originally thought about using haiku as a kind of structure. And as I spent all this time in isolation researching haiku, I understood that the essence of haiku is really what you can say in one breath. And I was thinking a lot about breath and thinking about sound rather than actually the words. And so these questions of like what sounds hold you and what sounds can help you to move forward felt really important. Also, in researching the first person narratives of the 311 disaster, so many people were talking about the horrifying sounds of the disaster. But we want to focus on the sounds that are moving people forward now. And maybe Honomi-san, you can talk also a bit, or Hiro-san and Natsuka-san, about onomatopoeia. And Japanese is such a sound-based language in a very, very different way than English. And that's something that we wanted to capture with this process of gathering sound experiences.
Natsuka-san, can we hear from you in response to Sue, please?
Sorry. Well, it's like what I wanted to add about the worksheet that we created for participants are how much time Natsuka-san, Hiro-san, and I spent time on creating, kind of taking the English questions and then turning them into actual Japanese questions, and that are easy to answer. Like, for example, the second question, what sounds give you strength? And the word strength, I remember Natsuka-san and I went back and forth with a lot of different words in Japanese, and we landed on hagemasaremas ka, which is like, what kind of sound cheer you up, in literal translation. So, like, this is the process of the cultural translation in this project, and that was really interesting. And then the third question, we talked about what does safety sound like to you? And we actually decided to just go ahead and then use the, like a literal translation for that in Japanese, anzen, so dono yo no oto desu ka, which sounds kind of, it's an kind of an unexpected question, I would say. And maybe Natsuka-san and Hiro-san can talk more about that. But, kind of, we wanted the participants to kind of stop and really think about something that they haven't really thought about, or maybe they haven't spent time for themselves to think about. And with that, I would like to hear from Natsuka-san or Hiro-san.
はい、ほのみさんありがとうございます。そうですね、私もほのみさんと一緒にすごく言葉を選ぶっていうことをずっとやらせてもらってるんですけども、そうなんですよね。質問を選んだ時はこの私たちのプロジェクトの役割というか、皆さんにどんな経験をしてもらうことを考えたいかっていう中で、なんかやっぱりアートの役割、私たちの思ってるアートの役割はちょっとこう何ですかね、こうちょっと立ち止まって、みんな普段とは違う方向から自分のいる場所が見られたり、何かこう自分の体が面しているものをふとこう見つめ直してみたり、なんかそういうことができるような経験、それを導くような質問をシンプルに考えるとすると、どんなことかなっていう中でこの質問が出てきました。
ありがとうございます。ヒロさん、コメントお願いします。
はい。
Please comment, sorry.
Okay. So, 実はですね、こういう質問を考える前に、仙台にいる、大学の学生と何度も話をしたんですね。先ほどスーさんも話しましたけど、その中でアーティストチームがすごくびっくりしたのが、その時は結構こう深い話をしていて、震災の当時3月11日の日にどんな体験をしましたかとか、その日の夜にどんな経験をしましたかというか、かなりこう直接的な質問をしました。でそれに対して20歳から25歳ぐらいの方なんですけど、2021年当時は、10代小学生ぐらいだったんですけど、彼女たちがまるでこう昨日見たかのようにものすごくこう鮮烈な 言葉を言うんですね。例えば3月11日の夜は、家がぐちゃぐちゃになっちゃったので、家族と一緒に今リビングだけを片付けて、その一部屋でみんなで横になって家族全員で寝ました。そこでテレビの砂嵐のザーッと音がずっと聞こえていましたとか、すごくものすごい記憶がビビッドに蘇ってくるようなことを話すんですよね。で、自分やアーティストチームでそこで思ったのは、やっぱ我々がやるべきことは、その当時3月11日のその日に何があったかっていうことを、もう一回振り返ってもらうっていうことじゃなくて、やっぱその経験とはちょっと違う仕方で震災とか自分の中にある嫌なちょっとネガティブな感情っていうとか感覚っていうのと向き合い直してもらうっていうことをした方がいいのではないか。しかもそれが結果としてなんか将来というか未来へのポジティブな感覚につながっていくんじゃないかってことをすごく考えて、ちょっとすぐには答えられないような質問を入れたという経緯があります。安全とはどのようなことですかっていうのはそういう質問だなというふうに思っています。
なるほど。Thank you so much. And I think I'd love to also acknowledge just in our very active and dynamic chat throughout this entire presentation. I'm so grateful for all of our audience members who have enthusiastically shared their thoughts and comments. And a audience member just commented that indeed we chose this particular date to have this presentation because it was the vernal equinox, the sort of spring equinox, and thinking about beginnings. So thinking about both past but really focused on sort of where can we go from here? How do we begin? Which I think was a central question for all of our artists today. And with that, maybe we can share the two sound clips we have, because I'd love to have our audience have a chance to see this interaction from simply a oratory experience.
What's on your mind right now?
I want to be able to meet up with my friends and relatives who live far away. I'm worried because I don't know when the coronavirus pandemic will end. In general, I feel grateful.
What sounds bring you strength?
The voices of people cheering for someone.
What sounds bring you a sense of safety?
The sound of nature, like insects chirping and flying, and the rustling leaves.
How do you feel after completing this exercise?
This experience allowed me to express what I feel in my heart and gather my deeper emotions.
What's on your mind right now?
I'm thinking about a place where one can find a sense of belonging. I'm concerned about finding peace of mind and feeling at ease.
What sounds bring you strength?
The sounds of your favorite person or family quietly sleeping.
What sounds bring you a sense of safety?
I used to think that ocean sounds were peaceful and safe. But the tsunami actually changed waves into a violent weapon that killed so many people. And hearing the blaring sirens and the voices of people crying out for help was so painful. So now, only the sound of nothing at all, feels the safest.
So powerful. Thank you for that. Sue, and Bruce, can you tell us a little bit about really how do we begin? This this act, and actually to all the panelists, this project has deeply engaged community. And all of you are, as we said at the onset of this presentation, all of you are artists who carry community engagement at the heart of your practice. So how do we take these incredible recordings that we have and the trust that we've been building and sort of, can you tell us about the next few months of this project?
Sure. Yeah. I think, there have been a lot of incredible creative challenges that we've all worked through together, and we're embarking on the next one because we have these sound stories. We've gathered about 30 of them. We were on pause for the past 3 weeks during this time of reflection and mourning. And, there are about 20 more people who are going to participate with us in the next coming weeks. And so our task really is, how can we create a score of these sounds that will be available to a wider public. So we are going to use the form of the sekihi, but with different materials. The tsunami stones are silent. Our stones, there won't be stones, but in the shape of them, we'll have voices. And we will put them in public places so that people can hear, everyday people in Tokyo can hear these stories, these sounds, and repeat them. And so there's going to be, we're going to be asking people to provide a kind of person-to-person human amplification. We can embody these sounds ourselves, and knowing where they came from and who said them first, I think is really important in terms of this kind of ripple effect. So we're planning to have presentations in the late spring and in the summer. And then after these official presentations, our goal is to actually return these voice monuments to the Tohoku region. So we're talking with different municipalities and museums right now to see who might be interested in having them. Our goal is not to keep them for ourselves, but to return them. We're also hoping that some of the sound that we collect can be part of different archives, like there's a 311 Remembering Archive that's based in Sendai. So we think of ourselves as a kind of conduit, and how are we going to keep circulating these voices and stories for other people to learn and grow from.
And we've had many beginnings in this project. It seems like it's all about change and adaptation. Our current beginning is the fabrication of the actual installations for this summer.
Thank you. It's really extraordinary, and I want to weave in some questions from the audience, as a number of questions have come into the feed, and I want to be able to give voice to that. So there are two questions that I'd like us to think about as we sort of wind down our program. One is, can you share some of the questions that you decided not to ask? Curious about which questions seemed more approachable in Japanese culture rather than what you might have wanted an American to answer. So that's the first question. And then another question that's come in. It is interesting that you chose a particular generation. Do you think the nature of the project would have changed if you worked with people from a different age group? So I open that to all of you. Maybe one person can take each question, and then I just have to say to the audience, I really appreciate all the activity. And one of the brilliant parts of this particular project is that all of our artists here today really wanted this to be participatory and are working to incorporate what's developed in the chat towards the project. So if the questions are not answered today, they will be answered in the future, or there will be a platform to be able to be answered in the future. And also early on, somebody asked about whether or not this was being recorded, and I'd like to confirm that this program will be recorded. And I'm sure that all of our artists will be very grateful if people would like to see the recording after and reach out to them with further questions. So on those two questions, I open it up to the floor. Any volunteers?
I think one thing that we've found is the consideration is in cultural approach. Americans deal with very direct and abrupt questions, and Japanese appreciate and ask much more subtle kinds of questions. So maybe some of our Japanese collaborators can speak to this.
Hiro-san, Natsuka-san, and Honomi-san, was there any sort of question that came up in a brainstorming session that you thought, oh, this would be interesting, and then thought, no, maybe we advise against it? Honomi-san, dozo.
Like one question that came to my mind that we talked a lot about was like, what would you like to release? 何を解放したいですか? And we went back and forth with that. Natsuka-san, can you talk a little more about that?
はい、まさに私もそのことを言おうと思って聞いていました。すごくこう日本語、スーさんがまず作ってくれた英語の文章を日本語に直して議論していくっていう作業が多いんですけども、その中でどうしてもいつも引っかかってしまう言葉っていうのがいくつかあって、それが、リリース、解放するとかそういうリリースっていう言葉と、あとヒーリング、癒す、ヒール、癒すっていう言葉、あともう一つぐらいあったけどなんだっけな。なんかその辺のこう癒しとか解放とかなんかこう自分がこう回復していくプロセスの中で使うような言葉を日本語に直した時に響きが全然違くて、というのは日本人の場合はどちらかというとあなたを癒してあげますみたいな、癒しの場に自分からこう飛び込んでいくっていうなんかこうそういう経路があんまりないと言いますか、なんかこう響きがちょっと違くなってしまう。英語で何を解放したいですかって聞いても違和感ないんですけど、日本語であなたは今何を解放したいですかって聞くとこうちょっと何ですかね、こうちょっとこう構えてしまうような言葉に変わってしまう。そことこうどう向き合うかっていうのを議論する会は何回かありましたね。
ありがとうございます。
はい。
And to the question of Hiro-san, go ahead.
はい、2つ目の、特別な、世代になぜ限定したかという話なんですけど、それについても結構議論がありました。最初はトラックで東北地方に行くっていう時はやはり俳句をテーマにするので結構こう高齢の方が、多くなるんじゃないかっていう話とかもあったんですけど、最終的にはやっぱり仙台の学生と話した時の経験がものすごく、我々を変えました。というのはやっぱりこう学生たちは10代で、被災したんですけれど、10代で被災してそれから、学生時代を通してこの10年震災後の10年を育ってきていて、で今これから社会に出て震災後の時代でどうやって生きていくかっていうことにすごく直面しているんですね。でそれっていうのがすごくこう切実だし、こう彼らが考えているのがどうやって震災の後の時代をこれから自分の人生として引き受けて生きていったらいいのだろうかっていう、そういう不安とか、さらにそれがコロナと重なっていたりしてさらにこう不安になったりするんですけど、そういうものすごい不安と恐怖に近いものがありました。でやっぱそういうところに触れるとこう私たちのプロジェクトもできるだけこう震災からどうするかということをテーマにしたかったので、それと彼女たちの感覚がすごく 我々の中で一致して、で若い世代をターゲットにしてこれからみんなどうやってやっていくかっていうところにフォーカスしていった方がいいんじゃないかっていうような話になったんですね。なので、石碑のための音の収集っていうプロジェクトっていうところは、彼女たちを中心にまず始めて、今、スーさんもさっき話してくれましたけど30人ぐらい、録音が取れてるんですけど、ほとんど、20歳20代30代の人を中心として、展開してるっていうところがあります。それはそういう理由からです。
ありがとうございます。So powerful, really and truly. This project is so multi-layered and thoughtful, and then to think about the intentionality behind the questions, the age group, the community that you've engaged, and the inspiration that comes from so many different people, and how you've evolved the project or adapt it along the way. I think that has been sort of a key component. This sense of experimentation, really. And I've always been so grateful to artists because your unique and sort of exceptional talent is to do just that, is to sort of absorb from those around you and then to reflect and to sort of show us how the world is, and then also to show us what the world can be. And so I think in thinking of our future, this project is so meaningful, and I want to wind us down by sort of sharing that, you know, oftentimes we think in sort of Eastern traditional philosophy, we think about this moment here being in this very now as a result of sort of everything we've done in the past. And in a Western philosophical approach, we think more about it being a moment or a step in how to get to where we want to be. That's a very big generalization, but in listening to tonight's conversation, I really felt that this collaboration embraced both sort of where we have come and to whom we've been very grateful to for experiences, for silver linings, for healing and for releasing, and the ability to move forward, and then also to sort of have these ideas of where we want to be in the future, all built on trust. And that is what this project is doing. And I think that in continuation of that, we just like to close with another Kamishibai. We've come full circle. And I would, before we play the Kamishibai in closing, I'd love to encourage everybody to stay on. The Kamishibai does have an invitation for you, to all our audience members, to join once again and participate. But I'd like to thank again the East-West Center, the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission, the International House of Japan, the NEA, and all of our guests. This has really been an extraordinary conversation. I could stay here for many more hours, but I do appreciate it, because what made this conversation so rich, I think, is our inspiring artists and the work that they've been doing. Thank you to our interpreters as well, and thank you everyone for having for bringing yourself here and showing up and being present in this important conversation. With that, please stay tuned. We will continue to have other sessions and presentations of the Nichibei creative artists. And with that, I invite you to participate in the next 2 minutes of our Kamishibai. Thank you very much, and good night.
最近一番よく考えることを一言で表すと何ですか？平和、ロミオとジュリエット。どのような音を聞くと励まされますか？たくさんの拍手の音。安全とはどのような音ですか？ストーブが作動している音。
最近一番よく考えることを一言で表すと何ですか？
宮城の未来、 自分の将来のことについてです。
どのような音を聞くと励まされますか？
繁華街がにぎわっている音。ガヤガヤガヤ、ガヤガヤガヤ。
安全とはどのような音ですか？
南部鉄器の風鈴の音。チリンチリンチリン、チリンチリンチリン。
最近一番よく考えることは何ですか？
家族のことです。
どのような音を聞くと励まされますか？
私の地元大槌町の祭りの音を聞くと励まされます。
安全とはどのような音ですか？
日々の生活の音です。
ここまで収録された今、何を感じていらっしゃいますか？
今の生活にとても自分が満足しているなということです。